I'm excited. He's joined us. So let's get into the episode of the Marriage Toolbox. So, welcome to the show, my co host. Welcome to the show.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm here.
You here?
Yeah.
How much I owe you?
You know,
$19.99 plus shipping and handling.
Yep.
And some smothered pork chops to get on the show with me.
Yep.
Okay. Well, I appreciate it, and you got it all coming. I promise.
Smothered and covered.
Smothered and covered. Okay.
It's gonna work. It's gonna work.
Listen, I just want to hop in. We just want to have a conversation because I know we have been getting emails and you guys are saying, hey, can you bring Mike to the toolbox? And can we make this a thing? So I'm like, all right, let's go. So today we're here to talk about life in the marriage toolbox. And I know some of y'all like, how did y'all come up with that, toolbox thing? How did we come up with that?
I think part of it was just kind of asking ourselves the question of how do you work on something, or what do you need to work on something? And so we thought about the toolbox, right? If you're going to fix something worth anything, you always have to have tools. And so that's why we came up with the marriage toolbox, right? So we know in the marriage toolbox, we've talked about an array of things. We've talked about some subjects, but I kind of want to go back to the concept again of the marriage toolbox or a toolbox. What are some of the things that are in a toolbox? Some of all of the stuff that you need to work on something, right? You need hammers, screwdrivers, nails.
I learned about a Phillips
screwdriver, right? Flathead. And no toolbox is complete without duct tape. You gotta have some duct tape to help you out in a quick fix.
I'm feeling shade early because when you say duct tape to me, the first thing coming to my mind is shut up and put something on your mouth.
That's not exactly it.
Well, make it plain for us.
Sometimes you need that duct tape real quick to help hold things in place while you are fixing them. See? Has nothing to do with your mouth per se.
Oh, what about timing?
That's for another time.
Okay.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to use duct tape for that. It's messy. But yeah, so we want to talk about some of the things that are in the toolbox. And so the last times we were together, we talked about some of the tools and what you use them with. But as I began to think some more, we began to kind of converse back and forth about the toolbox and how some of the things that might be in the toolbox. And I came up with this concept because I've been thinking about this for a while, that when you have a toolbox, you have the tools, the hard tools to work on things. But what happens when an emergency comes up? If there's an emergency situation and all you have is your toolbox, how are you going to fix it? How are you going to aid it? Right? Or what are you going to use for aid? Right? And so I thought, I'm a pretty nifty guy sometimes when I do pull out my toolbox, but at the same time, right next to my toolbox, I always have my first aid kit. And the first aid kit only deals with things that come up unexpectedly or there is an emergency, right?
So it's a possibility while you're in the toolbox that you can get injured.
Yeah.
You can scrape, you can cut, you can bruise. Those same hands that are there to caress, to put back together, to wipe tears away, those same hands can get injured.
Awesome.
Wow.
Yep.
And so every toolbox, every marriage toolbox should have a first aid kit.
Should have a first aid kit. Every marriage toolbox should have an emergency kit or a first aid kit.
Wow.
Should have, right? Now, I'll be honest with you. Most of the things that are in the first aid kit, they are not as hard or as big as some of the things that are in your regular toolbox. But nonetheless, they are very, very important. They are very, very important.
This like compassion, though. Like you can really fit your first aid kit inside of your toolbox because this is the kit of compassion.
Right.
And so when we look in here, we see galls and we see instant cold packs, because there are some times in marriage and things that happen in life, it'll bruise you.
Yeah.
Right. And I think we've already established that you're not my enemy.
Right.
But it's the elements from outside that causes us to experience pain, or there's some level of friction, or there's some injury that didn't necessarily happen because you caused it or I caused it. It was what happened out there. It could be childhood trauma. It could just be I've been let off of a job. Anything, things that life could be really happening. And we bring that home. I know for myself, I bring you I bring him everything. I bring you all of my issues because you're my friend. Besides being my husband and my lover, you're my friend, and you have that compassion. And there's been some times you couldn't use a hammer.
Right.
You couldn't use a nail. You couldn't use a screwdriver. You understood that I'm damaged or I'm bruised.
Yep. There have been times, not that I'm the perfect person, right?
For me.
But there are times that she have brought things that my toolbox, my everyday toolbox, didn't have anything in it to help the situation. Wow. And so with that being said, that meant that I now had to think outside of the box, watch this, about what's going to help fix the marriage toolbox, if that makes sense, right? There have been times where there's some situations that I know I did not cause the damage, but it was my job and or responsibility to help aid in the recovery.
Wow.
I want you guys to hear that. It was my job and responsibility to aid in the recovery. I want you to pay attention to that one portion, because many times when we're in a marriage, sometimes, especially us as husbands, we have this thing like, I am the 100% fixer. And if I can't fix it, then we got a problem. But there are times that my wife goes through things, or your wife might go through things, and all you have to do is be there to aid. Wow. Right? You don't necessarily have to fix it. Sometimes our ability to be able to aid a situation is just simply being able to hear the sentiments, or hear the heart, or hear the frustration, right? And sometimes, watch this, I've learned that even in the frustration, the thing that happened, it was big, but that portion was over, but it left a small sliver or something.
I.e. tweezers.
You need tweezers.
There have been plenty of times I've come in and you would swear that my head is about to be amputated. And he said, first of all, calm down.
Right.
Because as wives, or at least as this wife, sometimes it can be over the top, and I can start bringing things in and oh my God, and oh my God, I'm dying, and give me some gauze. And he will say, calm down. It's ever so gentle. It's simple as it's almost small to the eye.
Right.
It's the things often that no one else can pick up on, but he's able to discern.
Right.
And not use a set of pliers, because pliers pull out too.
Right.
Don't they?
They do.
But with compassion.
With compassion. But watch this. Brothers, if you look at this is a small tool, right? Which means that you do have the ability to use it, right? You have to manipulate it, right? You have to use finesse. You have to use compassion to be able to use this. But nonetheless, you don't have to feel like, look, that's woman stuff. I don't have the capacity to deal with that, but you do. But watch this. When you begin to look at these tweezers, you have to understand that you also have to have hand-eye coordination. Hand-eye coordination. Hand-eye coordination. Sometimes you have to use your hand-eye coordination with your wife, right? Sometimes we'll be doing one thing and looking someplace else, right? And sometimes when they're having those issues and those spasms, you have to use your hand-eye coordination and say, hey, let's focus in on this. This, just this.
Center me.
Let's focus in on this, because I've learned over the period of years that even though it is blown up to be a big thing, once I finally get her to calm down and she's like, but I still feel something. Then that's when you use your hand-eye coordination. Let's dissect this. Let's see where the real problem lies. It might not be a big thing, but I'm keen enough to know that it's causing her discomfort.
Because pain, because listen, when we begin to talk about pain will make you say and do some crazy things. Sometimes pain will cause you to say things that you really didn't mean. Mm-hmm. And it could be the little, it's little, it's the little cut, it's the little, what is that when you, when a splinter, mm-hmm. It's the little things, but it'll make you feel like my whole limb is getting ready to fall off. But it takes that hand-eye coordination to, first of all, pay attention. Hey, she's moving different.
Right.
She's sounding different.
Right.
And what I appreciate is that you don't go into that world with me, because I'm already in a world. Right. Yeah. So in that, when that's happening, I thank you for not being offended by what I'm going through. It's really just me saying, I need help.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I need help. You don't necessarily have to fix it, but if you can just get me in a position, mm-hmm. if you can just get me in a position to steady my hand, to calm it and look at it and tell me that, right. Listen, it's not going to kill you.
Right.
Just let me extract the little things and be willing, ladies.
Right.
Be willing. Who else would God trust to extract the things that's not necessarily available to everybody's eye? There's some personality, if I can just go there, there's some personality traits, or there are some things about my person, right. that, I'm not about to just share that with everybody. There are some things that there's some personal things that I'm working through, but not only is he my husband, but he is my person. He is the person that I confide in, that I can trust. Like, I got to come through this and I have to grow through this, but would you not judge me, but help me? Right. Because it's the little foxes that I'm trying to prevent from destroying the vine.
Right.
And so there have been plenty of times where you will say, babe, I need you to look at that again. Or there are times where I'm so hard and so difficult on myself. And he said, have you considered that it's really not you?
Right. Sometimes, I'll be honest with you, I think it's important, brothers, it's important when your wife, your woman brings these kind of issues to you, that you are willing to get the right kit out and show a level of love and compassion, even though she's going all the way off.
Now you ain't got to say it like that, like
all the way off, right? And the reason why I'm saying this, because what sometimes you sisters don't understand is,
tell us.
Once you bring us something, we're trying to hear it, trying to figure it out. And so we need to know, do we need to match this level of what's going on, or do we need to be rational? Can we look at it from a different standpoint? And then if I do, how will I be perceived? Right? How will I be perceived? And if we be honest, from talking to many couples, most of the time, it's not that the husbands are not compassionate or don't want to be compassionate towards their wives, but they might be looked at a little bit differently once they show a certain level of compassion and vulnerability, right? So it's like, yeah, if I do that, I don't know what the outcome is going to be after that. Or I put myself out there and it's not met with the right response. It's almost like if I put my hand out and you slap my hand, then what do I do? How do I respond, right? And so with this first aid kit, you have to learn how to be versed with the things that's in the first aid kit. And I will be very honest with you, you can buy a standard first aid kit from any place, right? But it's always best to have one that is compatible and suitable for your house.
Wow. You just said something there. Okay. You can get a first aid or recovery kit anywhere, but you need one that is suitable for your
house.
because everybody's house don't need tweezers.
Right.
Everybody, because you can always add.
You can always add.
You can always add. And so there are times where just in the house when we're actually stocking up our first aid kit, there are some things we throw out because that's not what we're going to need. But I do know, based on the injury levels and the things that we are subject to that kind of behavior, we're subject to those kind of injuries. We're going to need that. And I think it's important that couples realize, married couples realize there are some injuries that you are subject to just because of who you are. Just because of how you were raised. Some of us, the injury, for me, if I can just be transparent, I didn't see too many healthy marriages. So I'm subject to the injury of not being able to draw the line or to say, okay, let me pull this. I didn't have too many examples. So I'm subject to fall back or to default into the strong woman syndrome. I got this, right? And once again, that leads him to feel a certain way. And it leads him to, if he's not careful, to fall back on his defaults. Well, go on and do it then.
Well, I tell you a secret. I tell you what I learned. When that happens, I used to want to match fire with fire, match the energy, right? But I've learned, okay, I'll give you something. A Band-Aid. I'll just put that on you and leave it alone. And what that does is she can't come back and say, you're not even listening to me. You didn't even pay attention to me. You didn't even see what I had. No. I gave you what I thought you needed at the moment. But I'm smart enough to know that Band-Aids are only a temporary fix.
Right.
I'm smart enough to know that, right? Which means eventually that Band-Aid is going to wear off and we're going to have to deal with what that injury is.
And the reality is that when it's time for that Band-Aid to come off, how many times I said, babe, it's going to hurt, but I need to remove this because we can't keep walking around here.
Exactly.
In this level of brokenness, this level of pain, it's only temporary, because if we don't fix it, we're only going to repeat this cycle. So I've said, help me take it off. I know it's not going to feel good. And ladies, we have to get to a point where it is okay. We have to trust the God that is in our husbands. We have to trust that this is our life partner. I'm doing life with him. And who better yet do I want to take off this and listen, and Band-Aids could be temporary attitudes. It could be temporary. It could be whatever it is. It's not meant to stay. Right. And like this one, it's stuck. It look, it's meshing with my skin, and it, and oftentimes when people wear Band-Aids, if you're not careful, they want people to know they're injured.
Yeah.
Because it gives them attention.
Yep.
At some point, you got to say, it's not worth the attention. I don't want you to keep tending to something that's really healed. I just like the Band-Aid and I just like the attention. Remember one time you told me, you said, that's really not an issue for you.
Right.
You remember that?
Yep.
And I was like, yes, it is. He was like, it's really not an issue for you. I think you just don't know how to move forward.
Right.
But you're really healed.
Which is true. And to watch this. Also, I would like to say this much. Sisters are not the only ones that need Band-Aids placed on their situations. Sometimes us brothers just need to be heard. We just need to be filled out. We just want to know that you care.
Right.
Give me a little something.
Right.
Right. Sometimes we have this misconception, especially, us Christian people, that because I'm the man, I'm the head, and I got it, and everything is going to be well. But there are times that we don't have it.
Right.
There are times that we are so sore that sometimes we just need our woman just to come and just give us a Band-Aid, which lets us know, hey, I did pay attention. I did see something happening. Something is going on. I don't know what it is, but when you're ready,
right,
we can talk about it.
And I think I didn't learn that until like year. This is just us, so don't track your dates by our dates. Some of us are slower learners than others. But I mean, I think I learned that probably like year 5, because we were doing this in that area, and I had to realize he has feelings too, and he's not, he's not always Clark Kent, and he's not, always strong. And I wanted you to know that I saw you. I wanted you to know that I heard you, because there were times where I know that level, that tone, that voice, this shout, this sound, this hear me roar, was because, do you hear me? Do you hear? I hear you talking. But are you listening? Right. And so there have been times where I've come to you and I've said, you know what? I heard you, even in apologizing. I heard you. There was one time, my husband had said something to me, and, immediately I was like, well, no. And I would really wanted to just, fall into what I considered to be the truth, or what I wanted the end result to be. But it took me going into prayer, and it took Holy Spirit saying, go back and apologize. But in that apology, let him know that you heard him. And he needs to know that you see him. And I remember saying to you, I see you, and I thank you for staying. I thank you for all that you do for me as your wife. And as the father of our children. I see you, because I never wanted my husband to feel like, I go to work, I do all of this, I provide, and y'all still don't see me. You don't say thank you. You don't do anything. And I had to, I had this attitude like, it's your reasonable service. And it's really not, right? It's really not. Thank you goes a long way.
It does.
And I don't, as your wife, get a chance to take advantage of what you do. I do. I owe it to you to say thank you. I owe it to you to say, babe, I see you. And not only do I see you when you're doing something that I can benefit from, but I also see you when you hurt. I also see you when you don't know the answers. I also see you when you don't have the verbiage to articulate what you're going through. And guess what? I'm not going to nag you to death like, what's wrong? What's wrong? I already know something is wrong. Let me just fall back. And that is where it is in those situations, because you are very careful with your words and you know what words do. I've watched you fall back. And although I wanted you to tell me, you can't tell me something if you can't articulate it. So I give you the grace and the space. And while you're working it out, and while you're trying to find language, or there are times where you knew you couldn't tell me, because one, I'm a hothead. Two, I don't want to burden her with that. Or three, you know what? I just don't. It's a thing. This is between me and God. And so in those places, that's where I find a lot of my virtue to sit back and I say, God, you have to help him. There are so many times that I've taken my husband into the presence of God. Because I can't, we want to fix it. I mean, I'm one of those wives. Listen, I got a toolbox. I can fix it. But there are some things I can't fix.
There are some things.
I have to take you.
There are some things. There are some things that you cannot fix. Or there's some things that just takes time. And when you look into the first aid kit, there's one thing that is standard in most first aid kits, and it is an ACE bandage. ACE bandage. So an ACE bandage is something that you can wrap around a body part that might need support.
That's good. Wrap it around.
As time progresses, it will aid in the recovery process. And so in marriage, oh my God, in marriage, there are some situations you cannot fully see, but you know that there's support that's needed. And you have to take that ACE bandage and you have to wrap it. Now watch this. This is where sometimes us brothers go wrong. I've learned over the period of years of dealing in first aid is, the one thing I've learned is there is such thing as putting an ACE bandage on the right way and the wrong way. And the wrong way is if you wrap it too tight. If you wrap it too tight, you'll cause more damage then good.
Wow.
You'll aid in the damage and not necessarily the recovery. Watch this. In particular, if you take that ace bandage, if you wrap it too tight, you begin to restrict the blood flow.
Wow.
And sometimes in marriage, us as brothers, we're trying to help, we're trying to give aid, but we're doing it so tight, so forceful, so hard, so long, to the point that we are restricting blood flow. And so now our wives are like, this fool is trying to kill me. I'm getting ready to die.
Because it feels smothered, right? And you said something, it restricts the blood flow, right? And so immediately what that does is it restricts the blood from Calvary that covers me as your wife, right? Give me a moment, give me some space, right? And I think oftentimes when we're too wrapped up,
too tied up,
we lose our individual identities, right? Because it's one thing to become one, but it's another thing for me to become one and lose myself in the one.
Enmeshed.
Right? What works is I'm my own lady. He's his own man.
Right.
Right? And oftentimes when we're injured, the easiest thing to do is to lose who you are. And just because I don't want conflict.
Yeah.
I don't want to be seen as babe, how did we deal with that? Because there was a time where it was like, well, it's one thing, I just want to please you. But if me losing who he fell in love with, with me losing his identity, I don't think that's pleasing.
It's not pleasing. And you said it right. In the process of wanting to continue to have the person that you fell in love with, what that means is, I don't want you turning into this sloppy agape person. I don't want you turning into this very passive person, because that's not the fire that I married. That's not what I
married fire.
Oh, a little sass. A little sass, right? And so my thing is like, I want to keep that. I like that. That's what attracted me. That was a part of what attracted me. And so if I notice things, whether we're doing it together or you're doing it individually, or somebody's trying to give advice, and over the period of years, when you've been married for a while, people feel like you ain't doing it the way it needs to be done, and they want to give you some advice, and that advice doesn't necessarily work for you, because that advice could be the very advice that starts to put out that little sass that I went after, right? Because I did not marry a docile damsel in distress, right?
Oh, but baby.
And so, because of that, right? When you see certain things, you have to say, hey, what is that? Or I don't like that, right? I think sometimes in a marriage relationship, we got this thing, especially in today's time, we have to be this special Christian loving couple, to the point that everything has to be, oh, praise Jesus. Everything is wonderful. But there comes a point in time you say, hey,
you get on my nerves.
I don't like that. I don't want that.
Right.
I don't want that. I don't want that. And I'll be honest with y'all, that was one of the hardest things in the beginning for us. Yeah. We had to come up with this rule of no books, no Bibles in the bed.
Right.
No books and no Bibles in the bed. It was like,
Right.
No.
Because we both preachers.
Like, no.
So he'd be like, get that on out of here.
No.
And I'm like, I can't be sexy reading the King James.
No. No.
But no. Right. Because again, it goes into those outside suggestions.
Right.
Those outside. And so it's almost like, what was that bear, build the bear? You kind of just try to build you.
Right.
A marriage, you take a little bit of the Huxtables, and you take a little bit, of your favorite couple who you only see
in their best light.
For a limited time. You don't get to go home with them. And so at that, I remember we was like, okay, hold on. Every marriage has its own DNA.
Right.
Let us find what ours is.
What works for us.
Let us find out what works for us. So guess what? Yeah, don't bring that in here.
And nobody else has to agree with that.
Say that again.
Nobody else has to agree with that. I think that's one of the great misconceptions that we have, especially when you have couples retreats and parties and all this kind of stuff. No.
We keep polling what's right for what works for you.
You have to do what works for your personality type.
Yeah, and that's in every area, right? And I think we've talked about it before. Like we've had to do that in every area. We have to do it in parenting.
Yep.
We have to do it in how we treat one another,
right? And
how we show each other love. Like I'm big on birthdays. I think remember I think one time my husband messed around and told me, you know, oh, I never did that for my birthday. And did I give you a birthday party at Chuck E. Cheese? Was it Chuck E. Cheese? It was some. No, it was a kid. No, remember I get the cake.
Yes.
What was it? Spider-Man? Don't act like this on the live. So he was like, I always wanted this, right? And so I'm at the bakery, and the people are like, is this for your son? And I'm like, no, that's for my husband. And they looking like, okay. But I heard him say, as a kid, I wanted that.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's like, okay, those are the things that money can't buy.
Right. And it works.
You know,
it works for you. It has your DNA. It works for you all. And that's all that matters, because at the end of the day, y'all have to be happy with one another. Watch this. One thing that has helped us in our marriage is understanding our level. And what I mean by our level is we live within our means. This is very, very, very important.
Talk about it.
When you live within your means, that means I'm buying what I can afford. I'm doing what I can afford. I'm doing all within my power to do. And the reason why I say this is because when we were first married, I had all kinds of advice coming from everybody, and they meant well. But I had to learn that most of the guys, and they were all older guys, that were giving me instructions and information about certain things, I had to realize they had lived life. Most of them were on their third wives. Some of them were retired or retiring or have been in their job for 20 plus years, right? So they have a certain level of money, right? And so I found myself feeling less than because I could not do some of the things that they had suggested, but I had to realize that I had to do it within my means. And it doesn't mean that I stopped dreaming. It didn't mean that I did not keep striving. But what that meant was I had to give myself, hear me, brothers, I had to give myself permission to create the world for my wife and I on my budget.